Hello, everybody. Good morning. So we're continuing today where we left off Monday with our character Mike from the Reboot series. On Monday, we had finished the modeling and we're refining the surfacing. So this is pretty much what it looks like in VPR, changing it to the default settings here. And if we were to look at it in textured, shaded, solid, that's how it looks there. Now, one thing that I have added that I didn't do the other day that I want all of you to do is to create a simple flat ground plane and put that underneath him, okay? Because we need that in order to cast shadows to make it look like it's in a background environment. So that's what we're going to do next. And that won't take us that long today, but it's still, it's kind of important. And this is what is used in film and commercials all the time, where they seamlessly integrate the images with live action. And so that's what we're doing here today. Okie doke. Any questions before I continue? No? Oh, what let me also make note for all of you is that in my folder, here, let me put this in here. You can see this. Okay, so in Art 195, our shared folder in here, okay, if we look in my folder, I made the images that I created for his eyes available. So you can use those and project those onto him, okay? So I have the original Photoshop file and I have both JPEGs. I have one for the eyes and one for the mask. So you have that available to you. And I made some other files available to you as well that I'm going to use in a minute that will be are contained in the classic content here. In classic content, we have images and we have objects and we have scenes that you should all check out. We will look at some of those maybe later this semester, but I'm more interested in some of the images, and I'm going to use one of those images today. In fact, let me go ahead and grab one of those now and put them on in my folder. So I'm going to go to images because I need a background image. I don't want this plain background that I have set up here. And you'll notice that they're under a lot of different categories here, and they're really worth checking out. So I'm going to look at photographs. That's the title of the name of the folder that they have here, photos. Let's see if we can see it. I'm going to use the sandbar image. And it can't preview this because it's a TGA file. And as I told you in the past, one of the things that made it difficult to project some images in Lightwave in the past is that it was only recent that it accepted or recognized JPEGs. So, and I think it recognizes Photoshop files now. But the Targa files, that's what a TGA file is the one that was recognized in the past. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to simply download this. And I'm going to go ahead and move to, I'm not going to move it, I just want to download it. So I'm going to download it. And where I'm going to download it is, I have on my desktop a folder, and this is what you'll do. You'll put it in your folder. Here's the content that I have for 2020 for us. I want it in my image folder. So I'm going to save it in there. Now, I already know what this looks like. You can get any image that you want from the internet. I really don't care. But you might want to check some of these images out, check some of the models out, check some of the other scenes out, that sort of thing. That they used to make available for us in Lightwave, and they've kind of gotten cheap over the years, and they don't do that so much anymore. So I want to add a background to my scene. So what I need to do is under render, okay, I want to look at the render tab. What I want to do is I'm going to look at, where did it go? Right here, backdrop. That's where it is. So I want under backdrop. Okay. I'm going to click here. Let me go ahead. Let me look at composite. So under the composite tab, under effects and compositing, I want to bring in a background image. So this can be any kind of image that you want. And I pick one, this sandbar that is available. And if you want to use this image, you're welcome to. So I'm going to load the image in the background. And let me go back to my other image folders. So I'm going to go back to my desktop. And I'm going to look at content 2020 because I'm working on another file for myself right now. So that's right. Let's jump into that other one. And here's the sandbar image, TGA file. I'll open it up. Okay. Take a second here. And there you go. This is what we have in our background. Okay, so I can close that. And I need to adjust the camera a little bit. So let's go ahead and I'm going to move the camera. So select the camera and I'm going to move it. Let's hit T for move. And I want to move it up a little bit. Moving it the wrong way. I guess I should take off DPR because that kind of slows everything down. So let's look at this texture shaded solid. There we go. So I can move the camera a little bit. And notice that the background just stays static. And that's okay. Okay. So I have my guy positioned in a pretty good location here. And the background is of this sandbar with kind of a stream or a river to the right and some background foliage. Not really that interesting, but I want to place him in the scene. So I'm going to switch, once I have him positioned, I'm going to switch to VPR. See how that looks. And I don't like the color of him all that well. So I'm going to switch a little bit. I'm going to go back under presets. And I'm going to select again. I'm going to select brass, but I'm going to use gold and see what happens here. And I'm going to load the settings in here a little bit. And I like that a little bit better. And it looks a little bit more like the character. So really pretty much all of his settings, just by using the presets for gold and chrome and making some adjustments that we made the other day for his red hands or gloves and boots, look pretty good. The only thing that I need to do, and you'll notice that the shadow is cast on this, the image of the floor, but I want to remove the floor and leave the shadow so that it looks like he's actually standing on the background image here. So I'll close those presets. And now what I need to do is I need to change the properties of my background image a little bit. So here's my ground image that I have. And if you look at the settings in here, you can see that by default, there is no roughness, and then they add specularity of 50%. And that's where you're getting the reflection in the bottom here. Well, I don't want any reflection because it's sand. You don't see anything. So I'm just going to turn that off to 0. Okay. And because the sand is a little bit rough, I'm probably going to add maybe 3% roughness to that. How do I know how much? I don't. I'm just guessing at the moment and see if it works. The other thing that I want to do now, and this is the fun part, to get him to look like he's actually in the background with the shadow, but removing the image of the floor. In fact, I might move the floor over a little bit. So I have objects selected, I have the floor, hit T for move, and let's move it along the x-axis over a little bit. Yeah, because I'm concerned about what's underneath him and the shadow. And if I need to move him over a little bit, I can do that. So I can select him instead. And then again, along the X, I'll move him over just a little bit. There we go. So his shadow and him are going to be on the sandbar and along with the shadow. So here's the next thing that we're going to do. What I want to do is I want to make sure that I have the ground selected, and that under shading model, I select that. And then instead of photoreal, what I want to use is shadow catcher. It's right here. So what it does is it takes that object that the shadow is cast on and it removes the object, but it leaves the shadow. Voila. So now my character looks like he is actually in the scene, in that background scene. You can see the cast shadow of him. It looks like he is anchored to the ground, which is really nice. The only thing more maybe that I want to do in here is maybe adjust the direction of the light. So I can do that. So maybe I want the shadow, you know, in most cases, whatever photograph you choose for your backdrop, you're going to determine, you know, where the light source is coming from and make sure that the shadow of your character matches the photograph. So mine, it's kind of difficult to discern. You know, I think the light is coming from the upper left-hand corner here. But just to show you what I can do is I can go ahead and I can select the light. And again, with rotate along the y-axis, maybe I can rotate it a little bit because I can't see it. But I can go ahead and I can change it and rotate just a little bit back, like so. That looks pretty good. The other thing that I might want to do is that you'll notice that the shadow, the edge of it is really crisp. And typically shadows aren't, you know, unless they're really close to the object or not that sharp. So I want to change its properties and I want to soften it up a little bit. So what I can do, because I'm just using the distant light, and if you're going to work with your model on the inside, interior of a room, then you might want a key light, or and then you might want a fill light and a backlight. Again, you might have to add lights to match the scene that you're trying to integrate your character with. So what I want to do though is I just want to soften the edge of his shadow a little bit. So with lights selected, and I only have one light, I can go ahead and I can add properties. And I can bring that up, okay? Now, you can tell that I have the volumetric distance here of 1 meter. If I go ahead and I use the spinner to change this a little bit, and I can also change the intensity, I could change the color of it. You know, if I wanted this a little bit more on the yellowish side, you know, add a little bit of yellow and see how that looks. So it bathes every, you know, the whole object in kind of a warm glow. I could do that. If it were an evening scene, I could bathe it in kind of a bluish kind of tone. Well, back to the shadow, if I were to go ahead and I would increase the volumetric distance of the light a little bit, let's really crank this up. I'm going to crank this up to, nope, I'm mistaken. I'm going to leave that at 1. It's not that. See, I'm getting old. I can't remember. It's the angle. And it's set at 52 degrees. If I change the angle of this just a little bit, there you go. So let's change the angle of the light just a little bit, not that much. But you can see that by changing the angle of the light at 30 degrees, notice how soft the shadow is now. I don't want it that soft. So let's go back to maybe 5 degrees and see what we have. And that softens it a little bit. Let's try 10 degrees. And that actually looks pretty good. So it softens the edge of the shadow a little bit. He looks like he's standing and he's directly on the backdrop. And I'm set to go. I'm ready to render this. So now that I'm ready to render it, and I'm happy with the lighting and I'm happy with my surfaces, what I need to do, and this is what I want all of you to do, is that you need to go to the camera and we need to go to camera properties. So this is similar to what we did before. Now, instead of what we want to do is I have 1280 by 720. That's the size resolution that I have, and that's a good one. And I'm the multiplier is set at 100%, which is good, because I know that that's going to work out all right for the, I don't need it any bigger at the moment. But if you wanted it bigger, you could always change it, or if you wanted it smaller. For test renders, you might drop down to 50%, because it will take less time to render. And then for your final render, go up to 100%. And if you want to, open it later in Photoshop, then maybe you want to go and save it for print. Then maybe you want to go up to 200%. But to make sure that any jaggies are removed from here, what you want to do is minimum samples, I'm going to put 10. And maybe maximum samples, I'll put in 24. Okay, so if there are any jaggies that appear in your model, that will remove them. Okay, so I've changed my camera. Leave it as a perspective camera, 24 millimeters is just fine. Okay, so I can close that. Then the next thing that we need to do is, again, under the render tab, I'm going to go to render properties here. And under global illumination, I can have here under here brute force. If I want it to look a little bit tighter, I can increase the number of rays, and I'll start at maybe where you want to start is 1 ray to see how it looks. But I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to increase the number of rays to 4, get a little bit better look. And then also under render, I have all of these settings in here that for right now, I'm just going to leave alone. What I could do later, if I wanted to, excuse me, is I could increase the number of diffuse bounces. We really don't have any transparency, so I don't need to change that. Reflection, we do have some in our joints here for the chrome. So if I want to change that, I could increase that a little bit. But for right now, I think I'm pretty good. Let's see if there's anything else that needs to be changed. I think I'm pretty good. Noise filtering, let's go ahead and turn that on so that we can remove any noise from here. Render tile size, we can leave that at 64 for right now. And let's see about general settings. We can just leave those alone. So that's pretty much what we need to do for right now. And now I'm ready to render, and then I can save my file. I'm going to go ahead and close light properties. And I'm going to come over to render. And this shouldn't take long to render. And remember, for our class, you just need to render frame. So I'm going to go ahead and render the frame. While it's rendering, a couple of things that I'd like you to take into consideration when you're rendering your model. Make sure that your reboot character is fairly large in that scene and prominent, because we really don't know how big he is. You can make him any size you want. So he could be the size of, I don't know, he could be the size of the Statue of Liberty for all you know, or he could be the size of an ant. Depends on what you're trying to integrate him with. Okay. So it's done rendering. So I need to abort. And then I need to look at the final rendered frame, and here it is. So this is the size at 100%. And I could go ahead and I can stretch this out, make it a little bit bigger, or let's view it at 200% just to see how this looks. And it's a pretty clean rendering. I'm pretty happy with it overall. I might move him over a little bit to the right. I might move him back a little bit. But overall, I think he looks pretty good. And I think the shadow looks pretty believable. If he were on a rough terrain, not a smooth surface like this, I would probably want to, instead of a flat plane, make a bumpy plane. So I could show you how to do that, if that's the case, while you're working on it. And this is, as I said, this is done all the time in film and in video for commercials to integrate images, CG images with live action. So we have a photograph of a real site, and we're trying to put our character inside it. So the last thing that I need to do is save it. So I'll go ahead and I'll save this. So I'm going to save it as RGBA, and I'm going to save it both as a JPEG file, and I'll name it Reboot. Mike, and fall 2020. And I'm going to make sure that it's in my image folder. And here it is. Save it there. And then I'm going to save it one more time. Why not? Doesn't cost me anything. As a Photoshop file. So here's my Photoshop file here. So again, same thing, Reboot. Mike, fall 2020. Okay, and because it will automatically add the correct extension, there won't be a conflict in the name. So that's pretty much it for Reboot Mike. We've worked mostly in primitives, but we've deformed our character by using some of the modification tools, and to control the modifications that we've made. We've used some tools like the pole and pole evenly. We've also used more organic ways of modeling, so that we've used subpatch. To mirror parts of it, we've used the mirror tool, so we only had to build one arm and hand and one leg, and then we mirrored those so that the other halves were automatically made. We also use symmetry in building it, so that we could bend evenly both sides. But that's useful for a lot of things. You can build an entire model. In fact, later on this semester, we'll be watching some videos on building a head character, a character of a head, or a character model in its head in Lightwave using box modeling, just as I did for his little monitor head here, but something way more complicated. And I'll make those videos available for you on Canvas when it's all said and done. A few other things that we have here. What else did we use? We used some of the presets for the surfacing. I showed you how to take and join the foot to the leg. Okay, so we used the weld tool for that. What else did we use? We used quite a few things that, a lot of different ways of modeling. To create additional geometry, we used the bevel tool. And we also use smooth shift. So there's an introduction here to just starting with basic primitives, but using a lot of different tools to make something fairly more complex for us. So if there aren't any questions, that's all I have for you today. On Monday, what I'm going to do, so I would like you to, I'm going to start working with some of the multiply tools. And then when I'm done with those, I'm going to show you for the next assignment while you're finishing up Mike. It'll be the toy assignment. So while you're finishing up Mike, I want you to think about building a simple toy. And I do mean simple. It could be a chess piece. It could be a little Lego tool or a Lego part or a Lego character, but no transformers, no really complex models, because in this particular assignment, I will be focusing on the surfaces to make them look real. And then, as I said, after I'm done with the multiply tools, we're going to go into more complex ways of surfacing to make simple objects look really vibrant and realistic. And the demonstration that I've done for quite some time now is taking a simple cube and putting a ball inside of it. And then with projection maps and using transparent maps and a variety of other tools at our disposal to poke holes in our surface and to add bump maps so that it has a raised surface and things like that. And as I've done with the background here, something very similar, use image maps to project onto our surface to maybe make it look like real wood or something like that. So to show you, for example, something that I've been working on, let me see if I can do this. Unless there are any questions. Are there any questions from any of you? No? So you know where all of the images are found and everything that you need for this project? No? Okay. The thing that I've been working on for myself, so let me stop sharing for a moment. I'm back here, and then I'm going to go over to my model. Let's go ahead and let's go ahead and use sharing again. So I'm going to do it a little bit differently. So let's go ahead and I want to share the screen again. And the screen that I want to share is this one. There we go. So my goal is to create the lighting for a gallery that looks pretty believable. And I think I'm almost there, but I'm not quite there yet. A former student of mine, Dan Breland, who's also in my web class semester, helped me an awful lot with this because I just wasn't getting the results I was looking for. But this is getting pretty close for me. So, you know, I'm interested in right now in creating realistic scenes for myself, into which I can place some of my artwork, since all the galleries during COVID-19 are closed and there aren't any shows right now. So we're kind of stuck. So I'm going to create some of my own. So that's how that works. Okay. So that gives you an idea of what's possible in here. So I'll stop sharing and I'll go back to, let's share again. I'm going to go back to the one that we have here. Whoops, not that one. Let me go back again. Let's stop sharing. And I want to share again. I want this one. There we go. Picked the wrong one. There we go. So now we're back to this one. Okay. So I need to know from you if you have questions. So are you able to finish your assignment? Do you need any help from me? I'm thinking about the second half of the semester of doing something really radically different and having it optional for you. You know, for those of you who have purchased Lightwave, we're going to continue with that. But for those of you who are working in Blender, there are some, because I still don't know it that well. I don't feel that comfortable with it, teaching it to you. But I want you to feel comfortable using it yourself. So there are some really incredible tutorials that are available that I have made available for you in a playlist on YouTube that you could do for your project and even maybe for your final project. And we can talk about that at another time. Okay. So let me stop sharing again. Okay. And I'm going to go back. Let me move this up for a second here. And I'm going to move back to here. Move this back down. Oh, come on. There we go. Okay. So let me go ahead and finish taking roll because a few more of you have come in here. Now let's see what we have. We have Jonathan Guido, sorry, Juan Fernandez joined us. Cassandra Garcia joined us. I already got Malik and Monica Gomez is here. Quite a few of you are here today. That's good. And I think I already got Vanessa Sanchez. I did. And Angel Rojas. Okay. So no questions from any of you? No? Is it clear as mud how I accomplished this? But it's a good introduction to modeling in general, I think. Something that I think that's useful in that we start out with basic primitives, and then we take those primitives and add geometry to them, and then deform them in some way, which is generally, at least in how it's done in Lightwave and many other modeling programs, is how very complex models are built. You start with the basic primitives, add geometry, and then through a variety of means, whether it's organic modeling or something else that we haven't gotten to yet, we will later in the semester, Boolean modeling to be able to add complexity to a model. That will be one of the other things that we do. So we've only spent maybe a little bit more than maybe a half an hour today. But I'm pretty much done with my model. So let me go ahead and share the screen again so you can see what we have here. So this is finish up what we have. And I'll go ahead and I'll close the surface editor here. And I can go ahead and, like I say, I can take my model and I can move it back along the z-axis. I can add lighting. I don't want to move it forward. I want to move it backwards. There you go. But not too far back because I want him emphasized. So maybe I'll bring it forward just a little bit more. And you want to make sure that the angle of your character, and that's also why I picked this background image, the angle of your character and the ground on which he stands matches what the background image that you're using. So that's important as well. Okay. So I've taken roll. It's pretty much all there is. If you guys want to leave now, I will stop the recording and I will make it available. Or if there's anything that you want me to review, I'm happy to stick around and we can review something if you want. No questions? No? Okay, then we are done for today. Have a good weekend. Finish up your model and think about what you're going to do for the toy for the next assignment. That will be up to you. Entirely up to you. Okay, so I'll say goodbye for now. I'm going to stop recording. And then, oh, I do have a question here. So let's go ahead here, under the chat. Oh, yeah, thank you. Goodbye. And yeah, I will see you guys on Monday, and we'll show you a bunch more tools to work with. Okay, and different ways to build your model. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to stop the, pause the recording.